Happy Friday, ambitious readers. Welcome back to another edition of Reading Ambitiously, where every single week we bring you the most powerful ideas that are shaping our world. And one of our readers and my close friends pulled me aside last week and said, Jack, what are you teaching your kids about AI? And that is this week's big idea. For the past couple of months, my first grade daughter and I have been building software together. And our latest project is a product that helps her learn how to spell and how to type. And she's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and she's 6. But if you give her a whiteboard and Claude Code in a matter of minutes, she moves from idea to software. And what fascinates me the most as dad is the combination effect of a 6-year-old's imagination, which is already wild, and how Claude turns that imagination into something tangible so fast. Today, we have a Trolls-centric sing-to themed spelling game with different modes, different levels, and mini-game rewards, including her own version of Doodle Jump. All of this is highly personalized to exactly what she wanted. And while we wait for Claude to write all of this code, what do you think we're doing? We are spelling the words with pencil and paper, the old-fashioned way, again and again. And so far, she's been getting 10s out of 10 on her spelling test. It's a win-win for me because we get to spend time together. I get to teach her about AI. We get to study for the spelling test. So when a close friend said to me, Jack, what are you teaching your kids about AI? I found myself coming back to this story. Not because I think we should start giving 6-year-olds access to Claude Code or having them build software. Not because I think AI is going to make the hard parts of learning disappear. In fact, I don't think that will be the case. But I do think something has fundamentally changed. And that is the compression between your best ideas and being able to use something tangible. There's a great story I'll put in the in-print edition this week about a senior engineer at Google who spent 8 years working on one of his best ideas and with the help of AI, built it in just 3 months. That is what I am talking about. And it makes me think that the edge for these kids is going to belong less to the strongest or the smartest, and more to the children who learn how to respond to change, who ask better questions, and who turn their best ideas into something real. It is these concepts and concepts like it that I find myself wanting to reinforce at home. Not some fixed view of what job titles are going to matter or some prediction about 20 years in the future into what college degrees are going to be the most valuable. No, it's to have a responsible relationship with something powerful. And in this case, it's technology. It's to have character, to be curious, to be good communicators and resilient, and of course, to have good judgment. I think of these concepts as a new form of street smarts that we need to teach our kids to survive and thrive in this new world. And it starts with having a responsible relationship with something powerful. And in this case, the powerful thing is technology. But as parents, we're already thinking through a previous example of that, which is smartphones and social media. And I think this generation's parental instinct is, for the most part, to delay on this. It's to hold the line. It's to buy as much time as possible. And as major fan of Jonathan Haidt, my wife and I are the founding members of the Wait Till 8 pledge at our daughter's school. But AI is different. You may be able to delay a smartphone, but I doubt you are going to be able to delay AI because it's not confined to one application. It is showing up in the software that's all over our lives, the devices in our homes, our TVs, our ovens, our microwaves, our cars. All the software in our lives is eventually going to have AI. And what that means is that our job as parents is not to just delay. It is to prepare. It is to give our kids this new form of street smarts. And preparation, at least to me, does not mean trying to make every decision for them. It means giving them age-appropriate room to make the decisions themselves, to feel the weight of those decisions, to learn from the outcome, to touch the metaphorical hot iron. That's how street smarts get built, not through lectures alone. I understand this is much easier said than done as a parent, but that intuition, it's built through letting your kids just give it a go. through small choices, some good and some bad. And while the stakes are low enough that as a parent, you can help them make sense of what happened. Too often, what we call protection is really just substitution. We make the decisions for our kids, and then we wonder why their judgment never strengthens. They are going to need good judgment in this AI era. And that's why I keep coming back to street smarts. Now, the person that I know that has got the best of them is my mom. She grew up on the south side of Chicago where you needed street smarts to survive and thrive. Street smarts meant knowing how to read a situation before it turned on you, keeping your head up, knowing who you are with, paying attention to the tone, leaving early when something feels off. Our kids need a modern version of that. They don't need fear. They don't need techno doomerism about how the world is ending. They need good judgment. They need to know when a confident answer from the AI is still wrong. They need to know what information should stay private. They need to know when a tool is helping them think and when it's doing the thinking for them. They need to know when speed helps and when speed hides a mistake. They need to know when to close the laptop and ask a human being. Now, I am nowhere near a complete list of these street smarts, but a few traits keep bubbling to the top, mostly because I think they are going to help us as parents build good judgment in our kids. So let's talk about 5 of them. The first is character. Every morning on the drive to school, we walk through what I call the dad rules. There are 4 of them, and sometimes on any given week, there are 5. The core 4 are be kind, remember people's names, treat others how you want to be treated, and do the right thing when nobody's looking. I ask them about these every single day because I think repetition matters and because no technology will ever remove the need for character. In fact, technology as powerful as this one may raise the stakes because AI can help you move faster. It can also help you cheat, cut corners, hide bad intent, and avoid responsibility. Before I care what my kids can do with technology like this, I care who they are becoming before they use it. The second is curiosity. Now, a few weeks ago, before we built any spelling game, my oldest walked into my office and pointed to the little door on the ceiling. "What's that?" Well, I said, "It's the attic." She said, "Well, can we go up there?" I said, "Absolutely, we can go up there right now." I dropped what I was doing. I dropped down the ladder. We climbed up and we put our heads in the attic. Curiosity has a short half-life if adults keep putting it off. If we say things like later today or this weekend or not now, if we do that often enough, well, then we're training our kids that wonder belongs behind more practical things. And I don't want to teach that lesson by accident. I want their curiosity to thrive because the world that this generation is going to inherit, it's not going to stand still for long. The kids who do well in it will be the ones who stay open, who notice what's changing, who ask why and what it means and try to make sense of it. The third is communication. I want to teach my kids to speak well, to write clearly, to listen closely, to say what they mean. More and more, it would seem to us that the interface is natural language. The person who can describe what they want, frame the problem clearly, and hear what is missing, that person has a lot of leverage. We're building a spelling game. My daughter wasn't just learning words. She was learning how to describe what she wanted. We used voice mode on Claude, so she had to explain it and articulate it to Claude. And she had to learn how to point to an idea that did not yet exist and make it legible enough for the AI to understand it. And that is not some soft skill. It's an important skill. The fourth is resilience. The happy story about AI is they just type in a prompt and then a miracle happens and you just move on with your life because you get the outcome you want. That has not certainly been my experience. The model still gets a lot of things wrong. The first version's sort of pretty disappointing. Building software, if that's what you're doing, is pretty messy. That's why the part I really enjoy is the process of building software. It's the going through the creative process with my kids instead of just handing them some polished software. I could have done that. I could have built this spelling and typing game on my own time and then had them use it. But what they got to see was the real process. They got to try things. They got to understand when it failed. In fact, we hit a couple of errors and had to squash some bugs together. We had to revise. We had to try again. The point is not frustration for its own sake. The point is learning not to fall apart when the first pass sucks. In fact, this has got to be like the 11th or 12th pass of this week's edition of Reading Ambitiously. And I can tell you right now, the first one sucked. You've got to love when the first version of something is bad because you know that if you're resilient, you can iterate to something much better. The curiosity gets you started, but the resilience, it's what gets you through the broken middle, or what a few weeks ago we called the stall. And finally, you've got to know which questions to ask. For a long time, our sense of self worth and value came from knowing how to answer hard questions, typically through having a hard earned, scarce technical skill set. AI is changing the economics of answering questions. And I think one of the most reactions I've seen to recent progress in AI came from someone who had built their identity about being really good at mathematics. And when the model started to solve the same math equations that they had prided themselves on for so long, they weren't just surprised. They were stricken with grief. If your whole identity rests on being the person who can produce the answer, then the ground may start to feel shaky underneath you. If it rests on knowing what matters and which questions are worth asking and where to point your attention, I think you stand on firmer ground. That is part of the experience at the whiteboard. It's not the mastery of software engineering by any means. It's doing something much more basic. And in this case, I'm suggesting potentially much more durable. It's noticing what you like. It's asking questions and thinking out loud. It's imagining what could be better. It's helping shape the thing before it exists by asking good questions about what should exist. Now, I'm not an absolutist on any of this. In fact, in my opinion, it is a daily chore to be thinking through how the world is changing and how to give good parental advice. And I am not an expert on how the world is going to change. I'm still making sense of it myself, just like all of our readers. But I think I'm starting to know what I want to reinforce in my kids while the ground is moving underneath us all. And that is, I want them to be builders. I want them to ask good questions. I want them to speak clearly and to treat people well and to stay curious long enough to notice what others miss and resilient enough to keep going when the first version doesn't work. I also want to give them enough agency to feel the consequences of their decisions while the stakes are still manageable. Because if we do that, that's how good judgment gets built. I want them to understand that they are way more valuable than one skill the market happens to prize at any given moment in time. Because titles are going to change, the tools and technologies are going to change, the status is going to change. But the deeper work is learning how to adapt without losing yourself. That is what I'm teaching my kids about AI, not some theory about the labor markets or a prediction about which college degrees are going to be valuable. And I'm certainly not leading with fear. I'm doing something much more basic. I'm teaching them about the importance of having a responsible relationship with powerful things. Character, curiosity, communication, resilience, and judgment are all important street smarts that I think we're all going to need to survive and thrive in this new era. And I hope that you're teaching your kids something similar. And I'd love to learn what you might have to add to the list. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, ambitious readers. It's my pleasure to be with you every single week. Please do take care of each other. We'll see you again next week. Talk to you soon.